be at some point, but the topic is on suicide. So, it's kind of a two-part question that came our way, but what if a care receiver makes threats or talks about suicide? And then the second part was, you know, what if the threat is immediate? And so, the longer story really is just to ascertain if this seems like it's credible right now. And you have to assume it is, you know, if they're in front of you. Or if it's just innuendo. If it's innuendo, then, you know, obviously mental health people probably need to be involved in discussion. But if somebody has a credible plan, or they're saying, you know, this is what's gonna happen, you know, whatever their situation is, it's an emergency. And so you don't worry about confidentiality at that point. You know, you call, you get out the 988 number, you can call a mobile crisis. Pastor on call should be called, somebody from Stephen Leadership, because this has happened in, you know, in the group before with Pappy's care receiver. And so, you know, hopefully it doesn't happen to anybody else, but it needs to be considered something that's very important, you know, because we don't know their state of mind necessarily.
Do you make those calls in front of your care? You're with them.
Yeah, and you don't ever leave them. You stay until somebody else comes, you know, you're there. And you know, you can offer to, you know, is there a family member, you know, can we call on your behalf? But in the meantime, you need to get professional people kind of working their way too. So the police, you know, whoever you need to call to keep them safe.
I would urge you to have those numbers on your phone already, because that's not the time to call 411 and ask for directory assistance for the information. So have the pastor on call number on your phone, so you pull it up. Have the 911 suicide hotline. Have those numbers there. Be prepared for it, so you're not flailing.
Yeah.
Do we put those numbers in the emails that go out?
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that, yeah.
We can do that. That's-
They're also on that card too, that little card that we
Oh,
got.
the Stephen Ministry card?
Yeah, I think isn't there a hotline number on there?
The hotline number is for Stephen Ministry hotline, and that's not the one you're wanting to get.
Was
It's
that the one on there?
That's-
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's
the pastor
the
on
other
call
one.
that you
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to actually speak to a human.
John,
So if your care receiver, are there any keywords you need to listen for, let me put it that way, that says, I need to ask follow-up questions around that, so,
Yeah,
I
like-
would think that the answer is yes to that, and that, you know, it is appropriate to say, you're making me wonder if you're in a very depressed state, tell me more about that, and probe about where they are.
And they won't tell, you know, we've had people talk, and it was, what was his name? From Mommy spoke, Richard.
the hair.
Yeah, but, you know, you have to ask them, if they're saying, do you have a plan? You know, you need to just come out and ask them, you know, ask them that. And then, you know, if they say, well, no, but, you know, what do I have to live for, or whatever.
Yeah.
That person they need professional help, you know, and they're still not safe to leave, you know, without somebody being with them and somebody, you know, that is trained up on that.
Keywords like, I don't have anything to live for, I just wanna die. You know, there's other things in addition to, you know, I have a plan. And so you have to listen to what they're saying. If they sound like they are walking a very slippery slope, if they, and even if you second guess yourself, it'd be better to second guess, even if they're not eminently suicidal, they're talking to you and creating the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up, right? So that's enough for you to say, that's enough, I'm gonna get some other people involved here, and that's okay. And I would say to your care receiver who's making, and it could be not even your care receiver, could be just some person that you know. I'm gonna stay with you. I am going to get help. I can drive you to the emergency room. I will be with you. Who do you want me to call? Is there anybody, I mean, that's the kind of stuff, you just don't leave them at all.
I do remember from my training, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but, one of the questions that came up in our training was, well, I don't wanna plant a seed. Well, you're not planting a seed.
No.
If they're serious about it, they're going to more likely tell you they're serious about it.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna put them in, you're not pushing them towards that if you're asking questions. So-
And even if it's like, if it's not an imminent thing, and
Mhm.
but maybe it's just over the course of the time that you've been meeting, when they're saying, my family would be so much better off without
Right.
me, whatever circle, and you're picking up on things like that, then it needs to go, we need to get it, call somebody, one of the Stephen leaders, we need to get a pastor involved, we need a person, just, it's out of our lane right now, when that's happening, so.
I think to kind of parse that a little bit, if somebody says, people would be better off if I weren't here, I'm not sure that there's anything for me to live for. Those sort of existential wonderings may or may not indicate that the person is actually thinking about hurting themselves. If you hear things like that, that's when you want to dig a little bit about what's underneath that. To feedback and say, those are some pretty scary sounding thoughts. What's going on? Tell me more about what you're thinking. If you're getting a sense, as Carol and Ann have said, that the person really is actively thinking about hurting themselves, at that point, there's no reason to be obtuse, and it's not helpful to be obtuse. You want to be very direct and say, I'm getting concerned. It sounds to me like you're in a really bad place. Are you thinking about doing something to harm yourself? And most people, if they're contemplating suicide, they'll answer that question. And then you can say, well, how much are you thinking about that? How much have you thought about that? Well, I think about it every day.
Yep. Have you thought about how you're gonna do it?
Right. And you ask those kinds of very direct questions, and if they're not contemplating it, they'll say, oh, no, I'm not thinking about that. But, I'm a loser and nobody likes me anyway. Then all of those kinds of statements suggest that probably a mental health person should be involved.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But if they say, yeah, I have thought about this. In fact, I bought a gun last week. And I got one in the chamber. That's when you go to, I'm very concerned about you, and I can't just kind of let this go without us taking some action. Would you agree to getting some help right now?
And I would continue to tell you to trust your gut. And if you feel like this is uncomfortable, if you feel like something's not right, then something's not right. So.
And I've heard it said too, like if you were with somebody and they clutched their chest and they started to sweat, and you're thinking, okay, this person's having a heart attack. You don't sit there and go, like,
Tell me more about that.
yeah, or no, or just, would you be okay if I, you know what I mean? You treat it just like you would treat something like that. You don't, there's a stigma, but it's just the same. You just do what you know is right and reach out, so.
So John, I feel like when you're saying the first part of what you said, I think at that point, that is when, I don't think it should get to that second part. I think at that point, you run it up the flagpole, and they should no longer be a part of Stephen Ministry, personally. So once you've started asking those questions and you discern that it is, a mental health issue, I think at that part, at that point, we are not equipped.
I would agree.
Correct.
I would agree.
And so, I mean.
I wouldn't disagree
Yeah.
with that. I'm talking about what do you do in the moment?
Right. I have been in that moment, and I mean, it's real easy to sit there and say what you're gonna say, and somebody will sit there and tell you to your face, yes, I've thought about it, and you can ask them, what have you thought about doing, and they'll tell you what they've thought about doing, and you'll still think, well, I don't think they would do that, and they might not, at that time, but, you know, you're not thinking right then, so I do think you're right, you don't need to start going through these, but it is scary to think that you have to do something immediately.
Yeah, I just want to be clear though that we have to have the conversation.
Oh, yes, don't be scared to have
We
the
have to have the
conversation.
conversation at the moment.
No,
And I
I'm
would
sorry,
tell you-
do not be scared
Yeah.
to have the conversation.
And I would tell you, if you've never dealt with somebody who was at that point, and this is the first time you experience it, you're probably gonna wanna puke. And that's a pretty good sign that, hey, there's something serious going on here.
Well, and you're
We
also
have to
not
be-
gonna make somebody kill themselves, I
That's
will
right.
tell you that.
That's exactly right.
Nothing that you say is gonna make them
That's
kill
right.
themselves.
Good point, Sharon.
But then you're right, all of that needs to, all that information needs to be shared with leadership. Leadership needs to be brought in, pastor on call needs to be brought in, and then that determination can be made.
And you know, just, you don't even have to remember the suicide hotline. If you just call 911, they will get the mobile crisis, they will send, you know, the police chaplain, you know, the whoever's equipped, you know, they know to do all that, so it's like, not like you gotta, you know, scroll, just, yeah.
When you call the pastor on call, what exactly do they do? I've never needed to. Do they just call, try to talk to the person, or do they come out?
They will come out.
Okay.
They will come out. Amy, do you have a question too?
Yes, what do you do if you, let's say you said these things that you're telling me are concerning me, I think it's best to call the pastor on call or whatever, and they say, no, you know, I don't want it escalated. At what point do you say, no, I think I need to override you on
Right
this?
there, right there.
Okay, so
I'm
you just say that.
gonna stay with you. I'm not comfortable, and I think that you need to talk to somebody else.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'll stay here with you, but I'm gonna, you know, I love you that much, I
Yeah.
care for you that much, and this is not, what you're sharing with me is very unsettling, and I'm concerned for your health.
Yeah,
I'm concerned for your life.
in a sweet way, this is what we're doing.
That's right.
Mhm.
Exactly, yeah. Good questions, guys.
Yeah, you wanna communicate to them that you can't do nothing.
Right.
Doing nothing is not an option.
Yeah.
Out of a place of responsibility, but also out of
Care.
your concern.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we have not had a lot of this show up,
No.
so, but we have had a couple.